All right. Again, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good morning. So today, as I said, we will be talking about BBMA, which is founded by O'Malley. So let me just introduce um, the founder of BBMA. So in a nutshell, he is a Malaysian trader, and he started in the world of forex in since 1990. So he started the BBMA system along with Rohi Adenan. If you guys are in BBMA Learning Center, then that's his channel. So BBMA it stands for the use of two indicators, which is Bollinger Bands and moving average. So as the founder said, that the Bollinger Band is used as support and resistance, and the moving averages is to detect the trend. Okay, that's uh, what it works for. Okay, so we're gonna go straight to candlesticks formation. I know it's the very basic. So we have in a forex we have two candles, which is bull and bear, buy and sell. Okay, so I'm just gonna go straight along with this. Okay, as we know that a buy candle opens at the bottom and closes at the top, and a sell candles open at the top and closes at the bottom. All right, and from the open to the close, that's the candle body, and obviously we have the shadow or wick to the from the body to the low or high of the candle. Okay, just a little bit of introduction to MT4 for those people who doesn't know. So the most important thing on the MetaTrader is at the bottom here we have date and time. Okay, and on the right hand corner is the price. So we have an X and Y axis on the MetaTrader. So this is very important for a trader. Over here on the top we have the time frame, as we can say. So for example, this is an H1 time frame. Okay, so each time frame that defines how long does a candle is being formed. Okay, so if we're looking at H1 time frame, then each of these candles are formed within an hour. Okay, so that's really important, because later on when we move on to candlestick break and reject, that's really important, because in order for us to define or to make sure that a candle has broke through or reject a support or resistance, you have to make sure that the candle has closed first. Okay, so time frame and knowing how the candles are formed is actually very important for a trader. So on the phones, obviously it's the same format as well. We have date and time on the bottom, and also for Android. So you have the price on the right hand side. So for iOS, I think you have the time frames on the top left. Okay, and over here on the Android you have it on radial selection. Okay, but what's important here that I'm trying to show you is that you have to make sure that you know what time frame that you're looking at and how long does the candle is being formed, because that's the most important part of being a BBMA trader. All right, so here let's say that we are looking at an H1 time frame. Okay, so each candles are being formed within 1 hour. In BBMA there are two set of indicators, which is moving average high MAHI 5 and MAHI 10. So they are called sell indicators, and we have MALO 5 and MALO 10, which is buy indicators. Okay, so we have two pairs of indicators that helps us to define where we can entry for buy and sell. Okay, so it's really straightforward, because we are going to sell at the highest price, and also we're going to buy at the lowest price. Okay, Um, Over the period of this webinar, I'll be using some of the abbreviations such as CS for candlesticks, MA for moving average, MAHI for moving average high, MALO for moving average low, BB Bollinger Bands, MBB middle Bollinger Bands, TP take profit, SL stop loss, BE break even, extremes, MTP mandatory take profit for English, and CSD for candlestick direction. Okay, so all right, so now we're in time frame H1. Obviously, as I said earlier, we have the time frame at the bottom, date and time. And on the right hand side, we have X and Y axis, you have the price. Okay, so let's just say right now we are on an H1 time frame and the time now is at 8 o'clock. Okay, so we have a candle that opens at this price range. So let's say the price range is at $2.50. The candle has opened at a $2.50 price. After 15 minutes, the price went down, okay, and it goes to $1.50, okay, for example. All right, I just need a correction for this one because as we know, when the price goes down below the open price, it's gonna turn to obviously red. But in this one, it's a little bit of mistake here, but I'll correct it later on. So when the price went down to $1.50, then obviously you will see that the candle will change its color. Okay, and then another 15 minutes passed by at 8:30. The price went up. Okay, and now you have a shadow being formed on the lowest price that it has reached before. So this is now the lowest point at which this candle has traveled. Okay, another 15 minutes passed by. At 8:45 it went up to about $5 mark, and then at 9 o'clock the candle closes below the sell indicators, okay, and closes at a price range of $3.50. So this is now the candle close, and obviously this is the highest price that the candle has gone through. Okay, then immediately after 9 o'clock, when this candle has closed, you will have a new candle will register its candle open on the right hand side. However, it's supposed to be on the same level as it closes earlier on, let's say $3.50. However, sometimes you do see candles that open on the top or a little bit low of the previous candle close. This is due to some two factors. The first one is probably during the candle close and open, the price has changed drastically that it registers on a split seconds on a much higher or much lower price. However, let's say for example right today over the weekends we have the candle close over here. However, the market still run the price of a currency is still moving and changing over the weekend. So obviously on Monday tomorrow when the markets open, then it might register on another level depending on what is the currency at that point. Okay, so let's say a new candle opens here at 9 o'clock. The first 15 minutes it tries to go up again, and then another 15 minutes it went down to Malo. So this is now the highest point that this candle has traveled. And then, sorry, let me go back a little bit. Okay, and then at 9 o'clock this candle closes just below of Malo 5 and Malo 10. So this is now the lowest point, this is the highest point. Alright, so as you can see, this is how the candlesticks are being formed. Buy candles open at the bottom and closes at the top. Sell candles opens at the top and closes at the bottom. Okay, there's two important information that as a BBMA trader that we need to understand in this juncture. First one is obviously when the candle rejects sell indicators, it means that this is an entry point for sell. Okay. And the other one is obviously when a candle breaks the buy indicators, it means to you that this is a candlestick direction. It tells you that after this, the price is going to go down. Okay. So this is the basic fundamentals of candle reject and candle break. Okay. So over here I have four examples. The first one is obviously a candlestick, a buy candlestick direction, because this candle breaks through Mahi 5 and 10. So it tells you that the price is going to go up. Okay. Over here on the next one we have a sell entry because this candle rejected the sell indicators, Mahi 5 and 10. And over here on the next one, we have a candlestick direction for sell because the candle has broken through the Malo 5 and Malo 10, the buy indicators. And obviously the last one, we have a buy entry. So a buy entry, it rejected both MF5 and Malo 5 and Malo 10. So I hope that this short PowerPoint guide will be able to help you guys to identify candlestick direction and sell and buy entries, because this is very important between two things: candle break and candle reject. Okay. All right, so let me just close this for a little bit and we'll move on to okay. So is there any questions from that part earlier on with regards to candle break and candle reject and how the candles are being formed? Is there any questions? Okay, so seems like there's no question. I will give it to the participants that when we're going to talk about BBMA, what pair do you guys want me to use for this webinar? Is there any suggestions? Okay, UCAD and GJ. Okay, since Apple opens up early, so for today we'll use GJ. Okay, and also UCAD later on. So the most favorite one, GJ. All right. Okay, so we'll talk about GJ and USD CAD today, because there's many participants who want to see this. All right, so for today, obviously before I even start with Bollinger Bands and moving averages, what I need you to understand is there are few things I need to highlight for you guys as a BBMA trader. Because when I started learning BBMA back in June 2017, last month, about 7 months ago, the first BBMA that I learned was the new version of BBMA, which is if you guys have the PDF SSSS, that's the first version. And later on, when I meet another teacher, Bubuk Manta, he teach me the older version of BBMA. Hence, here I have deviations and stuff like that. So what I will do today is I will try to go with the new version of BBMA just to make it much more concise. And maybe on a later stage we'll talk about the older BBMA. Okay, so let's talk about the Bollinger Band. So the most important thing on Bulinga band is you guys have to know what is the main function of the Bulinga band. Okay? So is hang on, so hang on, let me just write it down here. Okay. I think I lost that. Let me just do that again. Okay, so this is most important thing when you trade BBMA. You have to understand fully what is the main function of the Blinker band. So the main function of the Blinker band is to contain all moving averages and all candlesticks within the Blinker band. Okay, so anything that is outside of the Blinker band is abnormal. Okay, so what do you mean by this? All right, so if you look at the charts right now, let me just see. Okay, if you look at the charts right now, if you have any candles poking out of the Blinker band, then that's abnormal. Okay, so it's trying to tell you a story. Okay, so um, there are two types of Bollinger Band, but before that, I will just introduce the lines in the Bollinger Band. So obviously, I'm pretty sure that most of you have already known that the middle line is obviously the mid BB, MBB, and the one at the top is the top BB, and you have a low BB. So you have these three lines that contains all the moving averages and the candlesticks within the Bollinger Band. All right. Um, let me just get a nice. All right. Here's a very good example of the two types of Bollinger Band. All right. Over here we have the momentum Bollinger Band. Um, okay. Let me just. Okay. So this is a momentum Bollinger Band. Why? How do we know that this is a momentum Bollinger Band? Okay. Let me just zoom that in. All right. So how do we know that this is a momentum Bollinger Band? So a momentum Bollinger Band is obviously, let me just write it down as well over here, is um, top and low BB. All right. So to make it easier for anyone who's just learning, that the definition for momentum Bollinger Band is top and low BB are pointing away from each other. So as you can see over here, you have the low BB pointing downwards and you have the top BB pointing upwards. Okay. All right. I think we need to take a 5 minutes break because we have the Azan prayer for Zuhur. So we'll just wait until it's finished, and we can continue with the webinar. Okay. Okay, let's continue back to the momentum linear band. As I said just now, in order for you to define and identify the momentum linear band, obviously the top and low BB are pointing away from each other. Okay, so in this instance, example over here, we have the low BB pointing downwards and you have the top BB pointing upwards. All right, and we have what we call a candle that is close outside of the blinker band. So this is what we call the CSM. Okay, so a candlestick momentum, its definition is obviously a candle that closes outside of the blinker band. So CS. Okay, so having said that, since we already talked about candlestick formation earlier on, we know that this is a sell candle, and a sell candle opens at the top and closes at the bottom. So obviously, the close part of the candle is outside of the blinker band. So this is defined as a candlestick momentum, a candlestick that closes outside of a momentum blinker band. Okay, let me. All right. Okay, so what other things that we know about candlestick momentum? So a candlestick momentum is a signal of market strength. Okay, and another thing that we have to know as a BBMA trader that is very important for us is that every first CSM will create a re-entry. All right. So these three are very important information because CSM, candlestick momentum, is one is categorized as signals. So it tells you that is a market strength that is going further down if it's a sell CSM, and it's going further up if it's a buy CSM. All right. So every first CSM will create a re-entry. So that's really important as a BBMA trader to know. All right. So let's move on to sideways blinker band. Let me just, okay. So a sideways blinker band is defined as this, okay. Let me just write it down for you first. All right. So a sideways BB is defined as top and low BB are pointing to the same direction. So obviously, you know that the market is ranging, is going sideways. So this is a sideways blinker band. Okay, top and low are pointing roughly towards the same direction that it's trying to do. So as you can see here, there's another sideways blinker band over here. Okay, and you have another momentum blinker band over here. Okay, all right. So let me just close this. All right. So the most important thing about sideways blinker band is we need to tell ourselves that every time a candle break or reject top or low BB, it's gonna go back to middle BB. Okay. So let me just write it down. All right. Oh my lord. So during sideways BB, every time CS break or reject top below BB, um, hang on, the price will return to middle BB. All right. So this is very important to know. All right. So over here is a good example that we have a candle reject on top BB. So it goes back to middle BB, and then as soon as it breaks middle BB, obviously the next target will be low BB. So this, as a trader, you need to understand this concept. Okay. However, this candle couldn't manage, even the second candle couldn't manage to go back to go to low BB, so it has to go back up to middle BB. Unfortunately, it rejected middle BB. Then now he has to go back down to low BB. So over this, we have a candle break. Okay, as what we have learned earlier on. So this candle breaks the Bollinger Band. So during sideways BB, every time the CS break or reject top and low BB, it will return back to middle BB. So as what happens here. Okay, as soon as this next candle breaks mid BB, it's gonna go for top BB. And the Bollinger Band is still sideways, then obviously you have a rejection on top BB again, and it goes back to middle BB again one more time. So this is what's how things work in the sideways Bollinger Band. What you need to understand that every time a time frame, for example, such as H1, we're looking at H1 right now. So this whole time frame is going sideways in the course of a few hours. Then you know for a fact that it is creating a re-entry on a much more higher time frame. All right, because on a 1 day on one particular day you have about 24 candles on H1. So if I count this, probably about one whole day's um, candle. So I'm pretty sure that over at this point that it is creating a re-entry buy on D1, for example. All right. So these things, even though it's very simple, you guys need to understand what the time frame is telling you, what the market is telling you. All right. So with regards to Bollinger Bands, is there any questions? You can just post it on the chat box before I move on to moving averages. All right. So if there is no question, then we'll move on to um, moving averages. Okay. So, so let me just delete. Let me just delete some of the indicators that we have here. All right. So we talked about the Bollinger Band, and now we'll talk about moving averages. Okay. So the first moving averages we're gonna talk about is MA5. So I'll add in MA5 low. Okay. So I have both buy and sell indicators on MA5. So what do we need to know when it comes to MA5? All right. So MA5 has two main functions. The first function is to detect extremes. All right. So this is the first function. So I'll just go around and show you guys what an extreme look like. So what extreme means on this particular information is that extreme A. So extreme A, its definition is obviously MA outside of BB. Okay, so that's its definition. MA outside of Blinger band. So as you can see over here, you have MA5 outside the Blinger band. So this is what we call extreme cell. Okay, and at the bottom we have MA5 low outside of the Blinger band. So this is now called an extreme buy. All right. All right. So the next function of the moving average 5 is point of entry. All right. So early point of entry. Okay. So let me just write it down properly here. So it's gonna help. Okay. All right. So second one is early point of entry. So what do we mean by this? Because earlier on we mentioned about candlestick break, candlestick reject. So this is why it's very important. Okay. So every time the candle rejects MA5 high or MA5 low, this is a point of entry. So here you can see that the candle rejects MA5 high. So these are actually a point of entry cell. Okay. And over here you see that the candles are rejecting MA5 low. So this is a candle re-entry buy. So this is a point of entry for sell and buy. Okay, so the latest candle over here, as you can see, is the candle rejects MA5 high and MA10 high, because I haven't put in, but I'm pretty sure it has rejected MA10 as well. So these are the main functions of MA5 and MA10. All right, because as I told you earlier on during the notes, that the founder Omar Ali tells us that the Bollinger Bands are dynamic support and resistance, and the moving averages are the indicator that tells us where the trend is going. So if you understand this fully, that we know that the candlesticks, how it moves is from Mahi to Malo, Malo to Mahi. As you can see over here, the candles at Mahi, it goes to Malo, goes back up again. So it's a continuous cycle of the candles moving along over the range of these moving averages. Okay, so this thing you need to understand fully. All right, so let's move on to MA10. Okay, so MA10, according to the BBMA notes, there's only one function. The function is to create a much more stronger entry. Okay. All right. All right. So it has a much more stronger entry. So in that sense, okay. So what do we mean by this? How 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 do how do we interpret this information? Okay. All right. So I think I'm gonna share a little bit of. Let me just open my PowerPoint over here. Um, let's just go over at this here. Okay, so Let me just share. Okay, can you guys see this slides? Okay, so let me just use this one over here, and let me just click. Okay, let me just delete those stuff. Okay, so all right, so we have MA5 high, Mahi 5, Mahi 10, Malo 5, Malo 10. Okay, so let's take for example that we have a candle. Okay, all right. So let's just say that I'm gonna talk about MA5 high only. All right. So let's just say that we have a candle that opens over here. Okay. In order for it to go up, we have two moving averages that is available on the top, Mahi 5 and 10. So if there's only one line, let's say only Mahi 5, then for a candle to break through is much more easier for it to break through. Okay? Let's say for example you have two lines over here, then it's a much more harder task for a candle to break through these two lines. Okay? So imagine, okay, you have another line, let's say middle BB. So imagine you have another line available um, to you at this particular point. So what I'm trying to explain here is that if there are two or more moving averages or lines in BBMA at a single point, then that is a point where there is a very strong resistance or support. So in that sense, if you have many moving averages or together with any lines in BBMA at the same point, that is a very strong point of entry sell or point of entry buy. Okay? If you have read the BBMA notes, that if there is a re-entry at middle BB, the movement of the market will be minimum of three candlesticks going downwards if this one is a sell entry. Okay, so let me just copy this. All right, so let's just say that this candle closes like this. Okay, like what you're seeing at GJH1. All right, let's say for example. So this is a very strong re-entry because as you can see the market tried to go up, but obviously there's a strong resistance at this point that it couldn't go up. So if the market couldn't go up, then the next thing that the market will try to do is obviously go down as a retracement. So if there's a middle BB over here, then the market will go minimum of three candlesticks. Okay? So I hope that makes sense in a way. So is is that clear? Um, is that clear for you guys? Can you guys hear me, or is there any questions with regards to MA5 and MA10? Okay, since there's no question yet, we can move on to talking about um, EMA 50. All right. So let me just add EMA 50 over here. So exponential close. All right. So EMA 50. So in the BBMA notes, it tells you that EMA 50 depicts the trend at which this time frame is heading. Okay. So on the BBMA notes that every time that EMA 50 is below middle BB, the trend for this time frame is uptrend. Okay. Every time the EMA 50 is above middle BB, then this is a downtrend. Okay. However, as you have probably some of you have followed my channel, that what I from my own observation that every time the EMA 50 goes outside of the blinker band, you know that the price is gonna go sideways, because when it goes sideways, it is creating a re-entry on a much higher time frame. Okay, for example, such as this. EMA 50 went outside, then obviously the price goes sideways, and then you have a sideways blinker band. Sideways blinker band on H1 is probably a re-entry on a much higher time frame. For example, let's just see. Okay, so let's find it. So as you can see over here, the setup is on a daily point of entry buy. Okay, over here you have the extreme at EMA 50, and it is actually a re-entry buy on the weekly time frame. So even the smallest time frame will tell you exactly what's happening on the bigger time frame. So that's how you define the market where it's heading. Okay. So another point at which I always tell my friends and those who learn from me is obviously when there's an extreme at EMA 50, or there's the moving averages constricted at one point, you know that this is a re-entry on a much higher time frame. For example, over here. Okay, let me just show this. So there's this extreme at EMA 50 over here. So if this was H1, then the re-entry should probably at H4. Okay, so you have these extremes. Okay, so if you look at H4, then you know that this is re-entry buy. You see, as you can see over there. So EMA 50 also gives you an information that there's a setup on a much higher time frame than what you're looking at right now. Okay, because at a lower time frame, it looks like an extreme at H1, but however, that extreme is alongside EMA 50. So when you know that there's an extreme at EMA 50, and over here is a very good example of a giveaway. Okay, so as I already told you that hang on, I think I lost it. Okay, over here there's a very good giveaway of the market is where it's heading. You have an extreme over here, and as you can see, EMA 50 maintains throughout below the middle BB. So you know that this trend is still uptrend. Okay, so if this time frame is going sidewards H1, then it's probably creating on a much higher time frame. Okay, so if I delete all of this, then I put it on one particular block over here, then this probably re-entry on a much more higher time frame. Okay, such as that one. Okay, all right, let me just go back to that box. Okay, let me delete this and show this. Okay, so we go to weekly, then you know, as I said earlier on, that this is creating a re-entry on a much bigger time frame. So when it comes to EMA 50, is there any questions? So we're looking at that as a re-entry buy. Okay, so let's say that I'm looking at weekly time frame right now, and you have an extreme at EMA 50 over here. So this is a re-entry sell because the EMA 50 is above BB. Re-entry sell at monthly. Okay, so as you can see, you have a re-entry sell on monthly over here. All right, so it tells you exactly all right, let's go for H1. So on H1 you have three different extremes, okay, at EMA 50. All right, even here. So you know these are re-entry sell at H4. Okay, so there you go. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you have 4 different re-entry sell at H4. So that's how I use EMA 50 to help me identify those re-entries. Okay, so usually when I have let's say for example that EMA 50 at H1. All right, at H1 is outside of the blinker band, and I know the re-entry is probably at H4 or daily. Okay, so if you have H4, then obviously it's daily to weekly kind of re-entries. So okay, let's move on. So we talked about candlestick formation, we talked about the blinker band, we talked about the moving averages, MA5, 10, and MA50. So before we move on to signals and setups, is there any questions with regard to this? Moment. What do you mean by moment from upping? Oh, okay. So a question from Apeng is, what time frame do you use to determine your trend? Okay. So I think we're going away from what I'm trying to do, but what I will do is obviously I will show you my way of determining trends. Okay, let me just open this. Usually I talk about this at the end of the webinar, but since you asked it, then we'll just continue with it first. Let me just open it. All right, I want you to ignore this part first. Okay, let me just close that first. Okay, so the first thing that I usually hang on, let me just share this video. Can you guys see this Excel spreadsheet? Can you guys see this one? All right. So the first thing that you need to know when you're asking the question of how do you define your trend, it you need to make sure that you know what particular trader you are. Okay. So there are three different type of trading. Okay. So let's just per se that first one is obviously scalping. Second one is intraday, and you have swing. Okay, so these are the different types of um, trading. So if you are a scalper, you need to make sure that you are doing your scalping on the right time frame. Okay, So if I was doing scalping, I would probably look at H1, M15, and M5. Okay. So these are the time frames that I should use to do scalping. Okay. So if I was going for intraday, then I would go for H4, H1, and M15. All right. And if you're going for swing, then obviously you'll be looking at D1, weekly one, and monthly. So this is the way for you to define what is a trend. Because if you're scalping, then obviously you should be looking for H1 for a trend. Okay. So if we look at what do you call this over here at this example, let's say GJ, you know that this is a downtrend. So obviously you'll be looking for a sell entry at this point. Okay. Let me just go straight over here. All right. So at the very end, let me just fix this. Okay. At the very end over here, you know that there's a candlestick direction, says Arakuku, and then you have a candlestick momentum. How do you define momentum? Is because you have top and low BB pointing to another directions, and you have MA50 crossing the middle line over there, and then you have a re-entry sell. So you know there's a new change of trend at at H1. Okay. So if you have the setup at H1, then you should be looking for a signal at M15. Okay. So there's extreme at M15, and you have a candlestick direction as well, and you have another re-entry. So if you want to entry, you can narrow down your entry to M5. So now you know M5 has a candlestick direction and you have another re-entry. So based on this information, you know that the lower time frame H1, M15, and M5 is going down. All right. So if you are a scalper, then obviously you need to set your targets. If you're a scalper, then obviously you need to know that you should be looking at 10 to 20 pips only. You shouldn't be looking for more than that, because you know M15 is ranging all the time. Okay, so if you're hoping for the market to go down so far, then that's the wrong way of doing it. Okay, so if you're scalping, then you just set it up to 10 to 20 pips. Let's say, for example, that let's say that you entry sell over at this point. Okay, if you already entry sell at this point, let me just make it more realistic for you. Okay, let's say you just entry sell over here, and after 10 pips, for example, or 20 pips over here, then you can lock your profits, for example. Okay, then you can lock your profits over there. You can put SL plus, for example, so you know that you're on the good side of things when the market has gone. Okay, let's say, sorry about that. Okay, let's say over there. So when the market has already moved, then you can lock your profit. If the market is still moving downwards, let's say for example, then you can adjust your SL plus accordingly. So this is how you should treat scalping. Okay. And then if you're an intraday trader, then obviously your target should be about 20 to 40 pips, depending on how the market moves on the day. Because on a daily basis, you know there are big players over the market, so the market will be able to move more than 100 pips a day. So if you're just targeting 20 to 40 pips, I think that's more than enough. So if you're on a swing kind of trader, then obviously you're gonna go for 50 pips above. Okay. So I think with this, then you know already what is the time frame that you should be looking at when you ask for trends. So if you're intraday, then obviously you look for H4 as a compass. It tells you where the market is heading. If you're going for swing, then obviously you're gonna go for D1. Okay, all right. So I hope this answers your questions. So before we move on to signals and setup, let's take a quick 5 minute break, and then we'll go back and talk about signals and setup later on. Okay, let's continue with signals and setup. So in BBMA, there are 4 signals. Obviously, let me just write it down over here. So the first signal I already explained to you earlier on, candlestick momentum. So, okay, as I said, candlestick momentum, its definition is the candle that closes outside the momentum linear band, which is a momentum linear band. Top and low BB are pointing to the other opposite direction. And CSM is a signal of a market strength, and every first CSM will create a re-entry, as you can see over here. Okay, so that's the first signal. The next signal will be extreme. Okay, what is meant by extreme over here is obviously MA outside of the blinker band. Okay, so MA outside of the blinker band is an early indication of a change of trend in the market, but it's not confirmed yet until there's an MHP. Okay, so as we can see over here, we have extreme sell. Okay, so over here we have extreme sell, and then obviously after extreme sell we have TP wajib, the mandatory TP. Okay, over here at MA 510. Then the market went up again, and the candle couldn't break top BB. That's the second characteristics of MHB later on, as we can talk about. Okay, so the next signal is obviously CSAA, which is the early direction. So as soon as you have, let's just find, all right, okay, let me just delete this. All right, as soon as we look at, we have an MHB, and there's a candlestick direction over here. Candlestick direction is MA 5 and 10. The candle breaks MA 5 and 10, but it didn't manage to break middle BB. So that's the candle direction. This is CSAA, CS arah awal, which is early direction sell, and this one is early direction buy at the low BB over here. And obviously the last signal is CSAK, which is English CSD, candlestick direction. Its definition is obviously a candlestick that break through MA 5, 10, and middle BB. Okay, so over here we have candlestick direction MA 5, 10, and middle BB. And for buy, we have this candle over here. Let's go for another example. So over here as well, candlestick direction buy. It breaks mid BB, MA 5, MA 10. All right. So I hope that the signals you guys are all familiar with. So now we move on to setups. Okay. So in BBMA there are 3 setups to be exact. However, for today we're gonna talk about only 2, which is MHB. Okay, so MHB, we need to identify the characteristics of MHB. So the first characteristics is obviously it happens after an extreme. Okay, all right. As you can see over here, you have an extreme, and then the next one will be there's a CS that couldn't break top or low BB. Okay, so that's the second characteristics. The third characteristics is obviously you have reverse yes. Okay, so when you have these two conditions, okay, you have the three conditions ready for you, then what you need to do is you need to mark the highest, the marking of the highest body. Okay, let's just take this one for instance over here. You have an extreme A. I'll just mark it over here. Um, you have extreme cell, and then you have TP wajib. All right, over here. And why do we need to TP over here? So this one is MTP, mandatory take profit. Okay. Why we need to take profit over here? Because the price will try to retest back up to top BB. When the candle couldn't manage to break top BB and then you have a reverse candle, that's when you need to mark your highest body. Okay. So let's just say, let me just edit this. Okay. So this is the marking of the highest body. All right. So we know that we need to wait for the retest. Okay. So when we, let's say for example that this is the reverse and this is now the retest. During the retest, when the candle went up, as long as it doesn't break top BB, then that is the condition where you can still hold your positions. Okay. For example, over here, the market continues to go up, but there is no momentum over here, so it is still a condition whereby you are able to hold this position. Okay, the only condition where you need to cut your losses is when you have a new candlestick momentum at top BB. Alright, so if you entry at MHB over here, let's say for example to this part over here, that's about 34 pips of you floating negatively. However, with this condition, as long as there is no candlestick momentum, that's still the condition whereby you should be able to hold your position. Okay, but MHB entry, I will, to be honest, the most important thing when you enter MHB entry is to make sure that the lower time frame has a candlestick direction. Okay, so that will make you much more safer entry instead of floating very far away. Okay, so now this MHB highest body is now invalid because you have a much more um, higher candle. Okay, so now this is the highest body available to you. So you just mark it, and then as soon as the market goes down, if you have TP before or you haven't TP, as long as it doesn't break this zone, then it should be another point of entry for that. That's why when you have marking of highest bodies and lowest body, it's always important to make sure that you don't delete those markings yet. Okay, so Rafael, is there anybody else having issues not able to see the screen? Okay, we need to mark the highest body so we know at what point where the retest will come by. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to see where the retest is. Okay, so obviously over here, the port condition or characteristics of MHP is the retest CS, where we entry our sell or buy. Okay, so that's the MHP setups. So now we have a much more higher MHB over here because we have a candle that couldn't break the OBB, we have a reverse, and then we have a series of retests. Okay, and then finally we have a candlestick direction. Then you have a CSM. Okay, so all right. Okay, so that's I really encourage everyone to actually make your own charts, like do your own mapping of the market, do your own labeling so you know exactly what you're looking at. And then obviously if you don't know, then you should show your screenshots to those people who know much more better than you. Okay, so the final setup that we're going to talk about is obviously the re-entry. Okay, so in BBMA, there are 3 points at which you can do your the entry. It's obviously the first one at MA5, okay. Then entry at MA5 and 10, and then the next one is the entry at MA5, 10, and middle BB. Okay. All right. So in that sense, we need to make sure that we know what part of entries are we doing. Let's say, for example, right now um, we have a re-entry at the moment over here. We have CSM, and then we have re-entry. So over here, we have candlestick direction, okay, and then we have CSM. So as I said earlier on, CSM is a signal of market strength, a candle that closes outside of the blinker band, and every first CSM will create a re-entry. Alright, so knowing that there's a re-entry, then we should look at multiple time frames that we're going into. So if this is a re-entry at H1, then we can still categorize this at scalping mode. So if you know H1, the setup is at H1 because this is a setup, then you should go to M15 to check for signals available to you. So you have candlestick direction and re-entry, and at M5, let me just, okay, at M5 you have candlestick direction and also re-entry. So I would highly suggest that you entry at the third TF and make sure that there's a candlestick direction at that time frame. Okay, so that's the signals and setups available for us for today. So I hope that is really helpful for you guys. So next stop is obviously multi-time frame analysis. Okay, so let me just open another one. So as I promised earlier on, we'll do multi-time frame analysis first. So we are blessed today because one of my teachers is here watching us. Chigu Farid is with us today. So according to him, that is very important for us to do our analysis to check on a monthly time frame first to do our mapping. Okay. So what I usually do is I usually like to look at the a chart, just the candlesticks. So at least it gives me a rough idea where the market is trying to go. Because if you have the BBMA settings, then it's pretty much very there's a lot of stuff happening inside BBMA. There's a lot of lines, so sometimes it gets you confused. Okay, so what I usually do is I usually map the trend lines. So as I can see here, we're doing this for GJ monthly. Okay, so I usually like to do the trend lines for this case. Okay, all right, so all right, let's okay, that's a much more concise kind of way. So I usually like to use the line charts first just to pinpoint the bottom points. All right, so right now I have pretty much have a rough idea what the market is trying to do. Okay, so obviously you have points of the market where it's heading. All right, so based on what the trend are, as you can see, at this is monthly of GJ, right? So there are points at which there is a very strong resistance line that's happening over here, as you can see. So it's very important for us to identify these things. As you can see at the very point at 1995 over here, we have the price at where it is right now at the moment. Okay, so right now the market is exactly where it started 1995, and then it became the support again on 1999, and the market managed to break through over here on 2007, and 2009 it became the resistance. So there's a change of um, SR flip over there, and then again it managed to break through, and again it managed to break through. So obviously as it breaks through, then there's a possibility that this might be a new line of resistance as we are of now. So that's a very good indication of what we need to see what's happening after this. Okay, so on a weekly side of things, um, what we need to do, okay, all right, so we go to weekly video. Okay, hang on. Haji Emran, video okay, but audio connection failed. So sometimes when you're having issues with sounds, you can use the video on your computer and you can use the sounds using your phones. So some of my friends use that. Okay, so over here on a weekly time frame, the market is already ranging in a sense that you know that this is a sideways blinker band. Okay, and there's um, there's a possibility, as we speak earlier on, that this might be a chance for a selling point at which on a monthly time frame that is at the resistance point of where it started before. So we know that we're looking at a potential potential yearly setups being in place at this point. However, we can't do we can't go for sell yet until there's a confirmation when it comes to this point. Okay, so over here at monthly we have a potential extreme. Okay, at weekly we already have an extreme. At daily we have an extreme, a double extreme. However, we don't have CSD yet. Okay, so if you would want to sell, I would highly suggest that you wait for candlestick direction at daily and you entry at its re-entry after the CSD. Okay, so that will make a much more better entry for you, much more better. Okay, so on the weekly side of things. All right, so on a bigger time frame, we are looking at a potential support and resistance flip. Okay, so there might be a bigger chance for a sell on a swing trade. Okay, so let's look at H4. So on H4 you already have a, a setup. Sorry, yes, a setup. So you have extreme A over here. Let me just mark this. You have extreme. Okay, and you have TP wajib. So MTP, mandatory take profit, and then you have MHB at the top. Okay, and then you have a candlestick direction, CSD. All right, so on Monday, if you have CSM, then that will probably be a best entry to wait for the re-entry after that CSM. Okay, so that will be a much more better entry, because as you can see, this is actually head and shoulders formation over here. Okay, so that's a head and shoulder formation, and you have a confirmation candlestick direction. So I would wait for re-entry over here. Okay, and obviously, as we know, the re-entry is already at H1, so everything is actually pointing downwards from monthly onwards. However, daily has not yet have candlestick direction. So in a sense, I would look at GJ for a strong sell in the next couple of weeks, but it totally depends on what's happened. The decision point for GJ will be at the daily mid BB, in my opinion. So if the price then manage to break through middle BB, then that will be a re-entry buy instead. Okay, so that's how I do my multi-time frame analysis. So I hope that helps. So now we move on to USD CAD, because some of our friends are waiting for that as well. So as usual, we'll go for what do you call this, naked charts. So just to make things much more easier to read, then I usually like to draw the trend lines. Okay, so it gives me a much more better information in a sense. Okay, but obviously at this juncture it's quite, there's not much of information at this point. So if I don't have any information at this particular time frame, I would go to weekly. All right, so on a weekly time frame I have a much more better vision of what the market is trying to do. Okay, so I would always use the trend lines. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it's just to show what a market is trying to do. Okay, so it looks like the market went down here and tested the trend line, goes back up, back to the trend line, and then over here and we're at the decision point whereby it's for a buy or a sell, because over here we know that this is a known point before. Okay, we know that this is a point where it's deciding. Okay, so we are already at that particular point. All right, so in that sense that I usually like to do, for example, this is the highest point at which the market has gone through and is now on the trend line. Okay, however, the market couldn't manage to break through the resistance over here. Okay, so what I will look into BBMA point of view, okay, is to look for setups and signals. Okay, so on a monthly kind of things, okay, we have um, ignoring this candle over here. um, we will take it as a candle that rejects stop BB. So we have an MHB, potential MHB setup over here, and then you have a candlestick direction. However, you have extreme at MA50 at this point. Okay, so extremes at MA50 at this point is usually a setup, a buy setup on a much more higher time frame, as we already talked about earlier on. Okay, however, that will be decided by this month's candle if it managed to break through MA5, MALO 5, MALO 10, and low BB. Okay, however, if we look at as another point of view, this is still on the buy zone of this monthly time frame. Okay, so it's still on the buy zone of the monthly time frame. So we still don't have any confirmation yet where the market's heading. So now let's move on to weekly and see what's the setup on a weekly time frame. So we have a candlestick direction and we have a re-entry at this point. The market is going to low BB. Let's go for daily. So at the daily we have a re-entry sell on middle BB that, according to O'Malley, that this re-entry, the minimum is 3 candlestick movement downwards. So we already have 3 candlestick movement over here. However, over here at low BB we have an extreme buy. So extreme is just signals; it's not setups yet. So we don't need to be alarmed yet. So it's just a signal, an indication, early indication that the market is going away from sell. Okay, so at H4 tells you a different story. So you have an extreme buy and you have an MHB. Okay, so this is the lowest body, a candle that couldn't break low BB, and then you have a reverse candle. Then the candle went up and back. It rejected middle BB. That's another re-entry. It went back down. This is now the retest. This is the second retest. So if we want to enter at the retest, then you need to check at H1 for any confirmation that there's still not yet any candlestick direction over here. So you have extreme over here. You have an MHB as well. And you are just waiting for candlestick direction, CS Arakuko, to validate your entry for this. Okay. However, at M15, it has already given you an entry point whereby you have double extreme over here. You have extreme, extreme, and this double extremes are extremes that doesn't have TPY chip. Okay. So you have a candlestick direction, and now you have a re-entry point at the middle VP over here at M15. So you have to make sure that even if you entry buy at this point. If your entry is M15 and it's meant for MHB setup at H4, then you should base it on H4 entry. So it is always a good it's always a good practice that you need to know which time frame that you entry. So if you entry at H4, then your exit should be at H4. You should TP as well at H4. Okay? So if you guys know, for example, if you guys know Fibonacci, how to use Fibonacci, so that will be much more, sometimes it can help you to guide you where the market is heading. So it tells me that it is now on the major entry and it's just waiting for it to break the 100% mark. So it managed to break the 100% mark. That will be the CSD, and that will entails you to for the market to be heading to the TP1 area. Okay, so let me just okay. So TP1 area would be at hang on, I lost that box. Okay, so if I go to D1, okay, something's going wrong here. Keep on losing the box. Okay, so in my opinion, I would look for a sell opportunity for GJ, and I would look for a buy opportunity for USD CAD when the market's open. But as I said earlier on, my teacher here, Farid Adnan, always emphasize that in order for us to entry, we need to make sure that the third time frame has a candlestick direction, because that will give you a much more better entry and a much more safer entry in a way. All right. So is there any questions on the session? Because it's now 2 o'clock. It's time for me to rest and enjoy the rest of the day. I still have another class at 4 p.m. So if there's any question, just type it on in the chat box. Okay, Mauricio. The other class will be a class at my place, so it's not on a webinar kind of thing. So only those in Brunei who is available to come here. For example, you're asking about my Fibo settings. So if you want to learn the Fibo that I'm using, just go to this website. They call it Fibo Musang Candle Break Retest. So I think they on the website you can able to register and learn from them. I'm pretty sure in other channels they also share videos and also notes on this, but for me I can't do that because those are copyright items, so it'll be a bad habit for me to share stuff that's copyrighted. So if you're really interested, then you should go to Fibumusang website. All right, for Mauricio, you were asking about the MetaTrader that I'm using. It's basically the same MetaTrader, but I think you're just wondering about the background at the back. I did make a guide on how to edit your background on your MetaTrader, so it doesn't look like this, doesn't look like basics. So you can add on some stuff on your background. Okay, so there's there's other backgrounds. You can edit your backgrounds according to what how you want it. So like this. So basically, I think just scroll through my channel. There is a guide for that. Okay. Is there any other question before we end the session? Okay, so if there's any no questions yet, I hope you guys continue to um, follow the channel and help support in a way. Soon, we will be launching a website whereby all the notes and videos will be available there. So I hope that you guys will be able to use that platform to expand your knowledge on BBMA, and there will be education on support and resistance, Fibonacci's, money management in the same website as well. So do keep in touch. We will update you as soon as possible, and hopefully we will be able to launch the website within the next few weeks. Okay, with that, I think I'll end the webinar. Thank you so much for your time. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.